97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Adam Caplan, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset and the culture that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Don't forget, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 a.m., the Inside the Birds podcast drops. He is the third member of Football at 4 on a Thursday. It is Adam Caplan here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Eagles at the midway point. Adam, we pull you away from counting ballots up there in Philly.
Well, look, we know what's happening in Pennsylvania, so we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, Eagles are at the midway point here. Not exactly the record 3-4-1 any of us thought they would have. Certainly under 500 was not expected. The schedule after the bye gets much more difficult. The Giants are no pushover. They're actually very competitive despite their one win. So, look, this is a good time to have a self-scout. You know, talking to coaches and personnel people, they love having a bye at the midway point. It rarely happens that way, but it is. They play their 8 games. And I expect them to play better football, but, man, as I said, that schedule is very daunting, and they've a lot to clean up.
Yeah, they do, and I guess it starts with the quarterback. So let's get into him. You know, you go back to the issues they had just against Dallas, but almost all year long. This decision-making, 4 turnovers in that game for Carson Wentz. I mean, I guess we got to start there. 8 games into his 5th year. It's an ongoing issue with him.
Yeah, I'm to the concern point. I'm not saying it's a crisis, but it's a concern. There's no question. 12 interceptions, 4 lost fumbles, 16 turnovers, so he's on pace for 32 turnovers, guys. That's just absurd. And at some point, he has to take responsibility. It's not just saying it. It's taking what's there and getting it done. This past game is a good example of understanding situational football. It's windy, okay? You got to be careful of where you're throwing the football because the ball's going to move. Well, one of the interceptions, the ball moved. And you got to know that as a veteran quarterback. This is his 5th year. You would expect more out of him, and he's just not delivering. And I like what Doug Peterson said, guys, on his Monday press conference. He talked about how they're going to have it's called a hit tape of all of his turnovers. And not every turnover is the same, but a lot of the same issues about him forcing the football, lack of awareness, poor situational football. That's just not excusable, man. You would expect that as a rookie or a second-year player, but 5 years in, that's just not what you expect. He's got to be way better.
Yeah, I mean, is it a product of he's trying to do too much? He doesn't take what's there. I mean, where is his biggest problems?
One thing I didn't mention, Mike, is mechanics certainly need to be better. Footwork, getting a good base. He doesn't always do that. He throws off balance a little bit too much. He does force too many throws. He's doing what we call hero ball, where he sees all these injured offensive linemen. He had all these injuries before last week's game. Now they were able to get Reagor back and Goedert, but he's still forcing too many throws and not taking what's there. Yeah, that to me is the big thing. And after this bye, I expect Dallas Goedert to have a significant role. He played a lot in this past game, but he was blocking mostly. Jalen Reagor's role is going to grow in the past game, so these guys are going to get open. You got to throw it to them. It's as simple as that, and not try to force it if they're not open. Now, there is a part to his game that I like. The Pittsburgh game was his best game of the year against arguably the NFL's best defense. Super accurate. He threw with what's called anticipation, where he got the ball out. In that game, particularly to Travis Fulgham at 150 yards, in the middle of his route, that's high-level football. What's not high-level football is throwing the ball when the guy has no chance to go get it. You got to know that. And, again, 5 years in, this should not be happening, Mike. We shouldn't be having this conversation. But he is by far the number one issue of this football team, and it's not even close.
What are the coaches' roles in fixing this Wentz debacle?
Hunter, it's big. I mean, it's fair because you've got the head coach who's ultimately responsible for all of his players. Then you've got Press Taylor, the quarterback's coach. Those are the two guys who really chiefly responsibility for him. They have to get him ready. And we said this before when Wentz went through his struggles for the first 3 weeks. We wondered if Carson Wentz is listening. Is he? You could hear it, but are you taking the message in? because they all see the same tape. They bring him in on Monday morning. They watch the tape together. They're pointing out all the errors, but he continues, guys, to make the same mistakes. And that's the thing that's so troubling. At this midway point, the bye will help Wentz because, by the way, the players are in this week. They're in through today. They were in through yesterday, actually.
Is that normal?
Yeah. Well, they have to be because of the COVID testing. They had to be. This is a little bit different. Normally, remember, Andy Reid would let them go on Monday morning unless you had to get treatment. But because of COVID, they have to be in the area. They cannot fly. Also, then the Eagles today put on Marcus Epps on the COVID list. So he was the player who tested positive. So, but overall, guys, it's Wentz's responsibility to listen and do what the coaches ask him to do and not do more than he's expected to do. Then that's the thing he's just got to accept.
We're doing a little self-scouting of this football team at the midway point. Adam Caplan from the Inside the Birds podcast. Don't forget their new podcast drops tomorrow morning at 6. When you look at this team, 3-4-1, has there been some things they can build off here? I mean, they're going to get healthy, but over those first, 7-8 games, what are some of the positives that maybe they can build off and get, Doug's been second half Doug a lot. They've had these second half wins against teams that you didn't think that they were going to be able to beat.
And you saw with Andy Reid, he was one of the best coaches in NFL history after a bye. Yeah, I would say this. Well, first of all, you could build on the positivity of Jordan Mailata, who had to start at right tackle until Lane Johnson comes back. And if Lane's back after the bye, ready to go, then he's the starter, obviously. And Mailata did a very good job for the most part at left tackle. So they finally figured out who he is, and he's been a great find for them. The number one positive story for this football team by far is Travis Fulgham. It's one of the most unlikely stories because consider he was cut by 2 teams, actually cut 4 times in his career. Actually, 5th, we should actually add, say 5, because he was cut by the Eagles to start the season, remember, at the initial 53, and he cleared waivers. And now, not only is he's their ex-receiver, he'll be their ex-receiver for years to come. It's just one of these things that you get lucky about. But one thing I am told, though, he definitely had a 3rd-round grade, which is remarkable to me. So they actually had him scouted correctly. So this has been, quite frankly, guys, they would not have a win without this guy. Think about that. This guy that they claimed off waivers, but it's true. So those are, they could build off that because what will happen is now with Reagor back and Goedert back, they'll eventually get Ertz back. I'm told they expect Jeffrey to be back after the bye. Now, we could take that and put that in quotes in that they expect him to be. That doesn't mean he will be. But he cannot have a setback with his latest injury, that calf injury. So they could build. I'll tell you what, the positivity is that they're younger, they're faster. Their D-line, they have really right now the best D-line depth in the National Football League. That's the way the league sees it. That's something to build on. Their secondary is starting to get a little bit better. It's been a little bit better than I expected it to be because they have tremendous depth at safety. Concern outside a corner, obviously. Opposite Slay. Slay's been terrific, by the way. That was a great trade. Even the linebackers guys have gotten better. Believe it or not, they've gotten better lately. They're not quite what you want, but you know what? This is who they're going to have. They didn't make any trades. So I would tell you this. If Wentz could lower the turnover rate to 1 or 0 per game, they're almost a cinch to win this division.
You mentioned Jalen Reagor a couple of times. So what did you see specifically from that game against Dallas that leaves you optimistic about Jalen Reagor? Yeah,
Hunter, versatility. You could line, they line him up at different positions. The Z position is his natural position, but they moved him around. That's good. They're probably going to use him in a variety of ways. You're going to see him on end-arounds and jet sweeps and ghost motion probably after the bye. They'll use him on 9 routes, which is a deeper route. They'll do that. They'll take the shot plays with him. Those are the kind of things. And his conditioning, by the way, I'm told was great in this game, so that's not the issue. The one issue, though, he's got to clean up are his hands. He put that the one play that I thought he could have had for it would have been a touchdown, and he needed to fight through. Actually, it was a tough catch, but you got to fight through the ball, and also he dropped that pass on the sideline where you have to catch it the right way with your hands out. So that he'll learn, and I've been told he's a very competitive kid. So I'm pretty bullish on him. I believe he's really going to help them. And he and Fulgham are going to be 2 starting receivers for the Eagles for years to come.
Yeah, it's funny. We had Baldy on earlier. He compared him to a young, athletic Alshon Jeffrey. He did for Fulgham. And, if you have Reagor and Fulgham, they seem like they would complement each other really well. Ward with the slot and Goedert. It seems like they are playing with their assortment of weapons that they should have for Carson for the next couple of years if they can stay on the damn field together.
Yeah, it's true. Look, one thing I didn't mention, but it goes along with their offense and the receivers, is that, their line is beat up. That's a problem, but they need to get some of these guys back. But if you get your line healthy and you get Reagor going, which they will, and with Fulgham, it's funny, it's interesting. Fulgham and Jeffrey are exactly the same height at 6'2.5", but Fulgham runs way better than Alshon ever has. Alshon at his height is a mid-4.5s guy. Fulgham runs in the mid-4.4s, is what some teams told me they timed him in, and he's way more explosive. But, yeah, they both attack the football, but Fulgham is a more well-rounded player. It's almost hard to believe what's happening with him. But getting back to Reagor, the thing with him is also, which they didn't do in this game, though I'm told last week he returned punts. He was probably the nation's best punt returner in college football last year. That's something he needs to do because Greg Ward did a good job in this past game, but Ward is a safe guy in returns. Reagor is way more explosive.
I didn't include Sanders there either because I mentioned the full assortment of weapons. Sanders is a part of that too. And I wonder, getting Sanders back, what he brings to this offense that has lacked over these last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I give Boston Scott guys credit for he played very well. The line blocked well for him, but Sanders is so dynamic, so versatile, so explosive. The Eagles will line him up in the slot, something they're really not going to do much with Boston Scott. He's a mismatch against linebackers. When you put that, think about the speed that they're going to have when Sanders goes back, which they unfortunately were not really able to do with Sanders and Reagor on the field. But getting Fulgham, Sanders, Reagor, and Goedert on the field at the same time, that's one of the best foursomes you'll see in the National Football League. And to me, that changes the game a little bit for them. And when they do that, and they will, you're going to see a completely different offense in terms of speed and explosiveness.
You mentioned Goedert being a factor in this passing game. In last game, he had 84% of the snaps with only the one reception. Do you think that was because of limiting him coming back from the injury, or is there another reason why that is?
No, he was an inline blocker for majority of the time. Remember, Wentz missed him for would have been a 25 or 30-yard pass, but the play got called back. But he was open. He won coverage. He got the 15-yarder. He was just used mainly as a blocker, and it worked. Look, he's a tremendous, versatile talent. I mean, he really is. He's more explosive than Ertz. He's got great hands. He's big, and he can block in the run game, and he can run vertically at tight end. So he's as we've called him, a little bit of a junior case Travis Kelce. Obviously not as talented. Same body type, and he runs really well, and he does it all. And he's actually a better blocker than Kelce, believe it or not.
I want to get your opinion, on the coaching staff and possibly what they need to work on, that offensive college of coaches that they brought in, maybe diversifying some formations here. Like, what would you think that the coaching staff, if they're self-scouting each other, needs to see?
Yeah, Mike, I'll say this. I thought they did a really good job in this last game, particularly the first half, a lot of pre-snap motion. You saw an orbit motion, actually reverse orbit motion with Jalen Reagor. But they need to do that every game. That should be on their bulletin board, more eye candy. Do something to give the defense something to think about each week. Now, we'll see what we didn't mention Jalen Hurts. I'd like to see that package extended instead of doing one play or two plays. Why don't you give him the whole series? The kid's got a strong arm. I know that he's a running quarterback. We all understand that, but I'd like to see him throw the football. He's got a good arm. So if you do that, you give the defense something to think about. They need to use everything at their disposal, and folks, they've not really done that a great job of that in the first half of the season. So to answer your question, they got to be more diverse with formations and also with pre-snap motions. They really need to do that. And I want to see triple stack. I want to see stack releases. I want to see bunches. I just want to see more diversification with formations, which they started to do this past game.
We're talking with Adam Caplan, Football at 4 here from the Inside the Birds podcast. It drops tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, 6 a.m. from the Inside the Birds. Guys, great stuff as always. Let's this defensive line, Brandon Graham, I was, a little bit surprised. I guess I know this, but when they mentioned he's never had double-digit sacks, I mean, it seems like he's having a good year. This defensive line down the stretch with Josh Sweat and Barnett and the interior there, I mean, if they're going to be able to pull off an upset in that stretch of games, it's going to have to be from those guys winning a game up front.
Totally agree, Mike. In fact, this is Brandon Graham's best all-around season. He is, to me, a Pro Bowler of the season. Pro Bowl should never validate a career, but in his case it would, because it would be his first time that he would be voted in, and he deserves it. He's been terrific. He's been their best defensive player, probably Slay second. I just think he's been awesome, and everything that he brings to the table, the energy, the passion for the game, the leadership that he shows to younger players, and really get good against the run, really good pass rusher, and he's just relentless. His motor it just never stops. And another guy who played well in this game, I should mention before he got hurt again, is Malik Jackson. His quadriceps, it's a quad strain. It continues to bother him, but he played really well before he got hurt. You got to give him credit for that.
Yep, and you mentioned the linebackers. Do you think when Gary comes back that he has been Wally pipped, or do they like him enough that they find a role for him?
I think it's going to be a three-man rotation, okay, at that linebacker role. But I'll tell you what, T.J. Edwards, guys, don't sleep on him. He did a really good job.
Thought so, too. I think Singleton's done a nice job. And you mentioned Slay, but now that they have Maddox back, Mills in his spot, is this the strength of this defense?
You know what? Jalen Mills did a great job. He really did. I thought that when I talk about coverage, now, the thing that we've seen from Jalen Mills is this. His ability to play safety or corner, because they call these guys at safety positionless players because they don't really play traditional safety roles. Because you'll see McLeod down in the box. He's more of a center fielder. He's more of a free safety, but you'll see him in the box. They use him not traditionally as when we first started studying the game years ago. It was traditional. The strong safety is the box. The free safety is deep. The Eagles don't do it quite like that. So he's done a good job. You know what? He's really not a true safety because he doesn't hit that much as a safety. But I'll tell you what, he's done a good job, and I'll tell you where he's helped them covering tight ends. They've asked him to do it. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but at 6 feet, 6'1", he does a really good job. And again, their secondary is starting to play better. I know that Dallas game's not a great judge of it, but they're starting to get healthy too. They, as a matter of fact, Will Parks also, by the way, he played double the amount of snaps this past game. He was available. The Eagles might have traded him had they gotten something good for him, but. He's there. He's playing more, and I expect him to be a bigger factor going forward.
Losing Malcolm Jenkins was obviously huge. Are you impressed with how McLeod has stepped up as a leader back there?
He has. He's been great, Hunter. I'll be honest, I was not totally in favor of bringing him back, but you just mentioned, and that's the reason why. They wanted leadership back there because they knew they were going to get younger, and they certainly have at safety. And I'll tell you what, I don't see why he wouldn't come back for another year. Really, and they do want to do more of this big nickel, the three safeties, and that's why I think Parks will play more. And I think when you just look at their secondary, folks, if they could just stay healthy, the secondary is going to be more of a strength than a weakness. Because last year was an absolute weakness. I think it's a little bit more of a strength this time around.
Now, I want to get your opinion because what is going on with the possibility of adding an extra playoff team? I read something today that if they add the extra playoff team, they're not going to give the home field to the division winners. It would be based on your record, which would mean the Eagles, if they won the East, would not get a home game. They would be the 8th seed. But what scenario comes into play to put the 8-team field into play? Are you aware of that yet?
No, but remember, you talk about the extra wild card per conference, or you talk about the revised
No. They're talking about adding
shift of week 18. Yeah, that's not decided yet. There's just a lot of talk of it right now. But look, it is real because it depends on what happens here with games having to be rescheduled. That's the big issue that the league has. And by the way, one of the things the league did not want to do, despite all the issues that the Niners have, the Niners were without 6 starters on offense, partially due to COVID.
Jeez.
And the league was not going to move the game. If you recall, they moved the first time the game was moved was the Pittsburgh-Tennessee game. They will not do it again unless absolutely necessary. They don't want to do that. It's almost like they're blaming these teams. Hey, listen, you got to make sure your players don't get this virus because we're not going to move games, and
right.
They will not do it unless absolutely necessary.
Real quick, I know we got to roll here. Josh McCown, he is signed with Houston. How is that? I know that they liked him. They thought he was a possible coach down the road, and how much he worked with Wentz. Is this something that is behind the scenes a little bit of a blow?
Yeah, well, but the thing is, he was technically on the practice squad, but he's not here. He's in Houston, and by the way, that's where he went. He lives in Houston these days, so. It was a little bit surprising that Josh did this, but they love Josh, and I was told pretty strongly that back in February,
right,
that they were considering bringing him in as assistant coach if he wanted it, and he decided that he was going to see if he wanted to play, as you know, and they did something we've never seen before. Having a practice squad player not be there, be at home. It's just certainly something we've never seen before.
Adam Caplan, Eagles at the Midway, 3-4-1, first place. Bye week. They'll play the Giants next week. Football at 4. More on the Eagles at the Midway point. The Inside the Birds podcast drops tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. The guys are back for Football at 4 tomorrow with Jeff Mosher right here on the Sports Bash. Adam, thanks so much, pal.
Guys, thank you.
All right. He, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And Football at 4 is brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Sign up now. They'll match your first deposit up to $250. Go to PlaySugarHouse.com and win real money with their sports book along with casino games from the comfort of your home. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So there you go, Adam Caplan, with a lot of great stuff on Carson Wentz and this team at the midway point.